everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to be your astrologer this week. This is going to be the astro weather for June the 23rd through the 30th, 2024. I hope you guys are doing well. Happy Sunday. How was that full moon in Capricorn for you guys? I hope it was a good one. Such a great time to be really touching on this up and coming Saturn retrograde in the sign of Pisces. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below, subscribe to the channel, help the channel grow, and give me a thumbs up if you found this helpful. Leave me a comment below and let me know which house is Saturn retrograding in your birth chart and how are you becoming better prepared for your Saturn lessons. All right, so this week for all of us, it's kind of a quiet week. We're going to see a lot of lunar aspects. So that's going to take a little bit more time to kind of get through the dailies because there is definitely a lot of things going on with the moon changing signs every 2 or 3 days. We're definitely going to feel some mood changes. So you guys might kind of feel like it's, you're kind of going with the flow. And the other thing to kind of take into consideration is that we are going to see a number of aspects that are taking place really between placements in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. So the moon aspects are going to be, I think, a little bit more moody than usual. Some of these aspects are going to be starting to form aspects to Saturn. So it's really important as we're kind of getting ready to come into the Saturn retrograde to watch some of these aspects like Mercury coming into a trine, Venus, the sun getting ready to come into a trine, because I think it's really helping us hone in our emotions and really focusing on what is important to us, what our emotions are trying to tell us, what's going on with our home, where we are taking action when it comes to creating like a much more comfortable, stable home or emotional environment. So you guys are gonna have to tap in a little bit more to your intuition this week, but I have faith that you can do it. And obviously the big news is that Saturn will be turning retrograde this week as well. So it's kind of interesting, right on the heels of a full moon in Capricorn before we have the second one next month. And also prior to experiencing the Jupiter-Saturn square. That's going to be building closer to August, but I'm going to touch on that a little bit today and talk about why I think this Saturn retrograde is so darn important. Now, Saturn will be retrograde until November of 2024, so we're going to have several months to be able to kind of better work with this energy. As you guys already probably know, Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. So Pisces is a mutable sign, which means it's changeable, it's flexible, there's some duality to it. It's a water sign, so it is sensitive, emotional, and reflective. And it has traditional associations with Jupiter, the planet which rules, philosophy, travel, belief system. But when we think about Jupiter and its connection to Pisces, this is about knowing no bounds when it comes to our empathy, when it comes to compassion, and also our spiritual practice. So that's why we're going to touch a little bit on Jupiter today as well. Obviously, the modern day ruler of Pisces is Neptune, and even Neptune is at that critical degree. And in this next month, we are going to see Neptune turn retrograde in Pisces also. So we'll have these two outer planets helping us kind of turn inward and reflect on what do we need to dissolve? Where are we, kind of self-undoing? Where are we not as focused or as clear? And kind of help us tighten that up a little bit. Now, when Saturn goes retrograde, it's a time for introspection. So I guess what's positive about this is that it's already in a sign that prefers to be alone. It prefers to meditate, to be in nature, to kind of tap into its own inner guidance. So for many of us, I think this is going to be a little bit easier to manage. But I think it's going to be really particular to the areas of life that Saturn plays a significant role in. So this is where you want to look at your birth chart. Look at the area of Pisces. This is the area where you are going to be reflecting on that area of your life. So you guys stay tuned to the end of this week's kind of transits. I will take you through the 12 rising signs and tell you exactly where this will be retrograding per your rising sign and how to better work with the energy. And Saturn also has connections to Aquarius. It is the modern day ruler of Aquarius, which is about the collective goals. It is about the future. It is about technology, as well as Capricorn. So this is going to be more about our roles out in society. It's about leadership. our careers, anything in regards to our professional life and outer kind of persona. So Saturn turning retrograde is going to be taking place in one location, but it's kind of blending Capricorn and Aquarius as well. Obviously Pluto's in Aquarius, it's retrograde. It will be dipping back into Capricorn here later this year. So that whole area of your chart is still kind of under construction, so to say, right? Between all of these kind of outer planet transits that are still going on. Anyway, where Saturn plays a significant role, right, is going to be in the house where Pisces is. It's going to bring up themes revolving around responsibility, discipline, and karma. These are kind of the key words when we think about Saturn. So during this retrograde period, you may find yourself revisiting, right, retro, to return, review, rethink, rework, revise, revisiting past decisions, especially reevaluating your commitments and assessing whether or not your actions are aligning with your values and your long-term goals. I've said it before, I'll say it again, Saturn in Pisces is about really asking ourselves, can I make my dreams a reality? Is it stable? Is it solid? Can it become real? Or is it a pipe dream? You know, am I delusional in this area? Do I lack faith? Do I lack consistency, vulnerability? So these are the kind of the topics that will come up throughout the next couple of months. I do think reevaluating your commitments is probably the best thing that you can do because this retrograde period is considered to be a time for growth and improvement. So I love Saturn retrogrades for kind of checking in and being like, okay, in this area of my life, I've been working for X amount of months since, you know, that planet Saturn kind of moved in there. And I'll give myself a grade, you know, I'll do a bit of like a review and kind of go, okay, this is where I am doing things right. This is where I can be doing things better. And then I come up with a game plan as to how I'm going to kind of strengthen or provide more stability in that particular house. I do think that this is going to offer us an opportunity to shed old patterns and habits that no longer serve us, allowing us to move forward with clearer sense of purpose and direction. Quite literally, Saturn retrograde in Pisces is I want to give back more. I want to focus more on my sleep routine. I would like to be meditating more. I want to help, you know, those who are in need. I want to be really strengthening my spiritual practice. I want to be working with manifestation and visualization. I want to go back to church. I want to go back to school. Things that have that blend of both Saturn as well as kind of Pisces energy. I think it's going to help us when it comes to also spirituality. I mean, because Saturn retrograde can have you dive deeper into your spiritual beliefs and practices. It may encourage you also to question your faith, explore new spiritual paths, or deepen your existing spiritual connections. This period can be a time of spiritual growth and transformation as you work to align your spiritual life with your higher purpose and sense of values. One thing I have noticed a lot that I've been hearing in sessions is a lot of people that are kind of realizing what's been holding them back, what's been blocking them, what they're afraid of, where they're limiting themselves. And I've seen a number of clients that have been turning to hypnotherapy. You know, Saturn can be seen as the teacher and working with like hypnotherapy to kind of unblock things subconsciously that they've been afraid of, or things or habits they've been having a hard time breaking. I love that for Saturn retrograde. And I've also seen a lot of people who have been returning back to a regular meditative practice, or maybe they're now seeking somebody who can teach them. That's kind of the archetype also of Jupiter as being kind of like the mentor or the guru. So some of you guys may be questioning your spiritual beliefs. Some of you guys might be digging deeper and asking yourself what you truly believe in, what you can align with. All of these things are good during a Saturn retrograde. I would just say it's important to note that retrogrades can sometimes be a little tricky. We are dealing with a sign that has connections to Neptune, so it can feel confusing and cloudy and emotional. We can feel vulnerable and afraid to kind of go into certain topics or certain areas, or to feel like we're exposing ourselves, right? So these challenges with Saturn retrograde can feel like obstacles that are coming up unexpectedly out of nowhere. And I think it's because it'll be connected to areas where perhaps maybe you've been avoiding responsibility or neglecting your duties. So if you do experience that, then it's a time to confront these issues head on and make the necessary changes, even if they're difficult. Because by facing these challenges, you're going to grow, you're going to evolve both spiritually as well as in other areas of your life. Now, the main difference between Saturn retrograde and Saturn direct really lies in the energy and the focus. So I always use the example of being in a classroom and you're, getting ready to either take a test or an exam, or maybe you're expected to continue working on a project and the teacher leaves the room, okay? So you're gonna have some students that are gonna kind of screw off, they're on their phone, they're not completing their project, they're not taking their exam, maybe they're cheating. And then you have other students that are just kind of like, eyes on the prize, working on their project, getting it done and making sure that they're still following the rules to ensure that they're in the teacher's good graces. Maybe they get a good grade, they pass. This is the Saturn retrograde. Okay, the teacher is stepping out of the room. So we're going to kind of see, okay, are you still going to stay on the path of your persistence and your responsibility and your commitments when the pressure kind of decompresses a little bit? I definitely feel like this can be challenging, especially having Jupiter in Gemini, because this is kind of like multitasking, extremely optimistic. It's the opposite of Saturn. It is about exploration and communication and, moving forward in very bold ways. So we'll kind of see these guys get tangled a little bit in a square in August and also in December. And I think that the Saturn retrograde is so incredibly important to be aware of, because we need to do that work. So we're not letting like Jupiter, kind of run free too far. So basically it's really encouraging you to focus on what you're working on internally. When Saturn is direct, you're moving forward, you have plans, you have goals, you're pushing forward, taking action and progress. But when Saturn goes retrograde, it's a time for reflection, introspection, and reevaluation. It is seen as a time where we slow down in that area of our life. We assess our progress. We make the necessary changes. Those of you guys who are ruled by Saturn, so my Capricorn and my Aquarius and risings, you guys might kind of feel the effects of this retrograde. You might feel like things are kind of slowing down a little bit, or that your progress is being thwarted in some way. Same thing for Pisces. You may feel the same way because it'll be taking place in your sign. Now, I've got a couple just quick tips for you guys. Some things to keep in mind to work with during a Saturn retrograde. Number one, when in doubt, reflect. Okay, that's the number one thing you want to do. Reflect on your goals and plans. Okay, so it's going to be important to take a step back and review your long-term goals and the steps that you've taken thus far to achieve them. Saturn's been in Pisces for a little over a year now, so this is not a new energy that we are working with. We are just now integrating and now re-evaluating how we, continue to proceed forward. We will still have Saturn and Pisces on and off into 2026, so we've got about another year and a half to work with it. We are halfway through this transit right now. So what a great time to assess what's working, what isn't working, and how to make the necessary adjustments. To do this, you're going to have to tap into your intuition, Pisces. You're going to have to listen to your emotions and also ask yourself, is it time for some things to come to an end? Now, to do this, you have to focus on discipline. Can be a little tricky having Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, because it is this more kind of etheric kind of energy. It does not have the solid structure that we would typically see in some of the other signs. And really, it requires a lot of faith. Faith in yourself, faith in what you're working on, your relationships, your future. But in order to be able to make that happen in a real way, to make Saturn solid, you need focus and self-discipline. So this is the opportunity in the retrograde to develop that self-discipline and that structure in your life, set realistic goals and create routines that help you stay on track. This could be as simple as, making sure that you have a weekly or a monthly planner. You're setting goals every week or every month. Maybe you have check-in points to make sure you're meeting those goals. You're focusing on time management, and you're also making sure that you're getting adequate sleep so you can be as productive as you can in your waking hours. Now, another big thing that comes up for me with Saturn in this sign is the need to address unresolved issues. Pisces is emotional. It's very sensitive. So we may find that during the retrograde, we become more aware of internal struggles and fears and things that are actually holding us back. So with Saturn retrograde, it'll bring these things, these issues up from the past to be addressed. Take time to confront and resolve any lingering problems or conflicts. Granted, you may have to do this in some kind of like metaphysical ways. So I think about healing and meditation and therapy, once again, hypnosis, but it can also be about spiritual practice. And the more that we're deepening our spiritual practice, we start to kind of realize emotionally there are some things that we've been kind of pushing down and like compartmentalizing and not dealing with. And it can come out in some very surprising ways. Pisces isn't always direct and in your face. It's something that kind of hits you like a wave of emotions, or maybe it comes to you in a symbolic dream. But really pay attention to some of these issues that kind of pop up for you, because they're needing to be dealt with so it can strengthen this area of your life. Obviously, practice patience and perseverance. These are some of the positive themes that we see with really any Saturn transit. But Saturn retrograde can feel like a test of patience. Remember that progress is likely to be slow, but every step you take towards your goals is valuable. It's not about the crossing of the finish line. It's about the process of the race before you get there. Being present with the right now. Yeah, Saturn can feel like a little bit of a struggle, but I really feel like this can really show us where it's helping us, learn how to be more patient, how to be more compassionate towards other people and also towards ourselves. And number 5, embrace self-care. Now, Saturn isn't really known as like a self-care energy. It can be kind of like stern and strict and, difficult to kind of adhere to its rules. But I think with Saturn retrograde, it can feel more challenging emotionally in Pisces. And I think it's crucial to prioritize self-care, engage in activities that help you relax and recharge, such as meditation, exercise, or spending time with loved ones. So when we think about the 12th house or the energy of Pisces, it's about rest, healing. This is the sign that rules hospitals and, rehab centers and temples and, churches and places where we go to receive some kind of healing, be that emotional or spiritual. So there is a need to make sure that we're really in tune with what our spirit is telling us and where we maybe sometimes do need to rest and not overdo it. So watch for those themes. We'll get a little bit more into it as we get into the day by day. But let's go ahead and start with Sunday. So if you guys are watching this on Sunday the 23rd, happy Sunday to my Sunday crew. I hope you guys are doing well, enjoying your weekend. We're still feeling that Capricorn moon. So it's still lingering. But the cool thing is that now that we're coming out of the full moon in Capricorn, the moon is now going to be making an aspect to Uranus. So the moon is in a trine to Uranus. So we are now adjusting to things. We've made those adjustments. So much about the Capricorn full moon has been about this kind of pull between what we know we have to get up and do, what our job is, what our goals are, what our responsibilities are, versus realistically what we would rather be doing, right? Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Cancer. We'd rather be kicking back at home, hanging out, making a meal, spending time with family or roommates, our partners, our pets. We definitely feel like maybe we've been, doing a little too much. That moon in Capricorn is not entirely happy because it's moving through a Saturn sign. However, not only do we have the trine to Uranus, which helps us kind of recalibrate and make the necessary physical changes or financial changes that we need to make, we also have the moon that is still kind of in a sextile to Saturn. So we learned that we can have rest and we can have, work time. We can kind of balance those two things out. I think I said to you guys last week, I was like, yeah, Sunday is a day that I feel like a lot of people will most likely be working because that Capricorn full moon was kind of in a trine to Mars. Then it comes into a trine to Uranus and a sextile to Saturn. So you may feel like it's hard to settle today and like not get work done or not want to run around and kind of manage things. And that moon has been in opposition, obviously, to the sun. That's the full moon, but also to Venus and Mercury. So there's been a lot of like wanting to focus on the end of the day or the things that we have planned outside of our work or responsibilities schedule. But we're like, it is just never ending. The good news is it's productive. I also feel like as this moon continues to go through Capricorn throughout Sunday, it's going to start building into a sextile with Neptune. So it's kind of dreamy. It does make us feel like we get a little bit more time to kind of rest and relax as we're getting to the PM hours on Sunday. Only thing you're going to want to watch for is that we are going to see the moon come into a square with Chiron. So there's something about our responsibilities, our busy work, our emotional challenges, our home and family kind of needs, that gives us a little bit of an ouch because it's squaring Chiron in Aries, and it's really bringing up through this closing square wounds that we have on a personal level, where we work too much and how it impacts us and makes us kind of agitated or snappy or, kind of short. Some of these are like the lower octaves of Aries, obviously. So that we can kind of see like where overdoing it is actually showing us that we're out of balance. Now, something you're going to see later in the PM hours, the moon is going to ingress into Aquarius, and this will be kind of later. So this will be, depending on where you are in the world. I'm on Central Time, so it's going to be around 10 o'clock my time. So it's going to be closer to 8 p.m. Pacific and closer to 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern. The moon's going to conjunct Pluto. So we are going to be feeling that emotional purge, change, transformation. Little intense, thankfully, at least in this part of the world. A lot of us are going to be either heading to bed or we're already going to be asleep. But when that moon-Pluto conjunction happens, it's also kind of quincunxing the sun. So it's kind of saying that there's something that feels disjointed. There's something that's kind of changing for all of us when it comes to our future goals and the impact that those goals have on our emotions, our home, our safe space. So the PM hours get a little spicy, in my opinion. So hopefully you don't catch that moon-Pluto conjunction. All right, so this is going to take us into Monday the 24th. Just pretty much all lunar transits on Monday, still worthy of mentioning. As we wake up in the morning, the moon is still in Aquarius. And when the moon's in Aquarius, we're always looking at what's going on with Uranus. What's Uranus doing? Not much. It's not really receiving any aspects other than eventually the next day it will receive a square. So nothing's really kind of going on. However, when the moon is in Aquarius, it will be building into a sextile with the North Node in Aries. So Aquarius wants us to socialize. It wants us to join a group, hang out with our friends, call a friend, connect and find ways to emotionally relate to one another. What's difficult is that after we see the moon-Pluto conjunction start to separate, we are going to start seeing the moon coming into a square with Mars. And so that's going to be in the PM hours. I don't want to, tell you guys that the whole day is going to be challenging. Really, it's not. Most of the day is actually going to be quite positive, especially because that moon, which is our emotional kind of relation, will come into a trine with Jupiter. So I love Monday for meetings. I love it for team building exercises. I love it for going out to dinner or lunch with your friends. I love this for planning some kind of group get together or outing. Anything that's going to be about working with a team or being able to focus on, okay, how can we kind of bring our best talents together and support one another in some way. And that's not just the sextile to the North Node, but the moon trine Jupiter in Gemini is chatty, it's communicative, it's social. This is great for hosting like Zoom groups, or if you're wanting to get on spaces on X and you want to share something, if you're wanting to post something. It's really great for getting a lot of attention through communication and media. So that's going to be most of the day. We're not really going to pick up the square to Mars until the PM hours. So it looks like right around, right around dinner time, depending on where you are, that's when the moon will square Mars. Now, Mars in Taurus is like, it's just chugging along, right? It just wants to do what it wants to do as long as it feels productive, rewarded, comfortable. This is a very sensual placement as well. So with Mars in Taurus, a lot of people can be just kind of going at their own pace, their own speed. When it comes to their drive, their actions. And moon squaring that means that we're going to have some people or something outside of ourselves that's kind of like, could you hurry up? Could you get going? You know, are you ready? And especially with the moon still in a trine to Jupiter, there's going to be a lot of communication. So it's going to require us in the PM hours to be open-minded and be willing to get outside of our comfort zone. Don't rush. Don't, feel like you have to rush through anything. But even with the moon and Mars hitting 11, that's an Aquarius degree. So it's kind of reverberating off of Pluto in Aquarius, major changes for the collective. It's reverberating off of also the incoming square that we're going to see the following day with Moon square Uranus, which means we're making changes to our goals. Those shifts in our goals are going to have a physical or a financial impact on all of us. Likely you're going to be hearing a lot more about this uptick Monday morning of people just being all over social media, talking about their perspectives on what's going on with the financial world, possibly also a lot talking about post the debates, where you've got a lot of people who are emotionally reflecting on, Aquarius, politics, leaders, leadership, the future for all of us. And the square to Mars is going to definitely be some very heated interactions with people. People who are going to be, going back and forth and arguing and being combative online and about, physical or financial things. I would just say, avoid the intense exchanges, avoid the discussions of politics or anything with friends or online, because it can definitely be a little ferocious there. All right. So that's pretty much the only aspect that we're going to be seeing. That moon's going to keep moving throughout the PM hours through Aquarius. And late at night, it's going to start coming into the sextile, both with Chiron, but also the square to Uranus. Now, this is going to take us to the 25th, which is Tuesday. And when we wake up in the morning, that moon is still in Aquarius. It's now coming into a sextile with Chiron, so we could be feeling wounded based off of experiences we had with friends or people online or groups, or we could be feeling empowered because maybe we feel like we have our own perspective and we're independent and we're kind of connecting with the right people because of that. But the moon is going to be now swinging into a square with Uranus, and this is a little emotionally destabilizing. Anytime you have the moon in Aquarius and you see a hard angle that's playing out between the moon and Saturn or the moon and Uranus, it is definitely a little bit more turbulent. And so, like I said, this is a closing square. So this basically means that something's going on with, groups of people and what they're saying and thinking and how they're connecting and communicating. There is Pluto still in this sign, so it does talk about moving through some significant power changes, issues revolving around crisis, things pertaining to social changes, and that moon square Uranus is basically saying people aren't going to be seeing eye to eye. Now, Uranus is in a financial sign, so the other way of looking at this is that this can be saying that some of the kind of exchange, the internet being on fire, talking about things, is really directly connected to financial situations, to banking situations, to budgeting, spending. So I'm wondering if that's going to be like a big talking point potentially on Sunday during the presidential debate. Possible. It's very possible that a lot of things are discussed and talked about. People have some very strong opinions about it. Out in the world, though, this can mean that we can see a little bit of turbulence with the markets. That is possible, and groups responding very strongly to volatility that we can be seeing within the financial or banking world. So be mindful of that. We are going to see the square in the PM hours. So you're not going to really see that real turbulence until closer to the early PM, kind of going into dinner time. and it's going to pick up around 25 degrees, and that's an Aries degree. So there's definitely going to be some intensity revolving around individuals and what individual views are on resources and spending and money and you know, people's perspective on what is and is not valuable. And there's going to be a bit of a clash here with perspectives. So watch for that. Emotional turbulence as well. All right, so then this is going to now take us into the 26th, and this will be Wednesday morning. And, you know, Wednesday and Thursday, just make a note, these 2 days are incredibly sensitive. These are the days that you're probably going to notice a pretty distinct mood shift, that you're going to be in your feelings a little bit more. I really recommend Wednesdays and Thursdays. If you have a pool, if you can go to the beach, if you can go to a lake, if you can say, hey, I'm coming home from work, I'm going to make dinner and soak and take a bath. Water is going to be your friend. It's going to really help you throughout some of these transits with the moon. Now, we wake up on Wednesday and the moon is in Pisces. It has ingressed. So now we're going to be looking at what's happening with Neptune. We're going to look at what's going on with Jupiter. Pisces moon, we retreat a little bit. We want our privacy. There is a tendency to focus more on sleep, but there can also be self-undoing tendencies. There can be tendencies to overdo it. We're going to see a lot of overdoing it energies because that moon is going to come into a square with Jupiter. Well, what are we doing when Jupiter's in Gemini? We are overstimulated. We are probably oversleeping. We may potentially be over drinking. We may be overthinking. So there is a little bit of like, oh, okay, that's a little too much internet for me, or a little bit too much like scrolling. Be mindful that this is also kind of spelling out that we may see some issues revolving around storms. With the mutable squares, generally it does produce storms. We're seeing some crazy storms all over the place. I feel like every time I open up social media, it's like, okay, this place is flooding and that place is, you know, having this like horrific storm. I know that they were talking about it kind of going through the Gulf and parts of Texas this week, but I saw like cars getting completely swept away in Mexico. I don't know if you guys saw that, with like insane flooding that I didn't know was possible like that there. I also know that there's been all kinds of like crazy storms. I saw like big chunks of almost what looked like dirt, but I think it was hail that was hailing in some other state. I don't know where it was. I saw, I think it was hail or snow that was happening in parts of Canada. So like crazy extreme weather with some of these mutable squares. So be mindful that with Jupiter squaring the moon, there can be some visibility issues. If there is some storms, there can be flooding, rain, fog. We can also see issues with tornadoes. I think as we start to see Mars get closer and closer to Uranus and Jupiter over the next 2 months, we're going to see some pretty crazy storms. And it goes without being said, Saturn and Neptune and Pisces is definitely going to bring the water. So depending on where you live, make sure you're aware of what's going on with potential storm advisories, because it can impact travel and communications with this square. All right. Other than that, we will also see the moon make a ton of other aspects. So the moon, if we go kind of sign by sign, will start coming into a sextile with Mars, which is going to make us feel emotionally and spiritually grounded. Like if we're in our zone, if we are zenned out and we're like, I've meditated, I've slept, I did my thing, you know, I'm completely grounded, we can feel more productive, right? Sextile to Mars, we can feel more willing to get something done. We are also going to see that the moon is going to be in a trine to the sun in Cancer. So that really helps our actions and our emotions come into alignment. We feel like things just flow on this day. The positive is that when the moon is making aspects to anything in Cancer, it's going to be happy, because it's like, okay, cool, we're vibing, we're kind of in this, you know, feeling show together. I think that with the sun and the moon trine, it's really saying that in order to get things done today or to be in flow, we have to listen to what our emotions are telling us. We have to take time to process things. We may have to cry a little bit or get something out, or we may need to be reflecting on the past or security, or just listening to our intuition better. Then we will also see the moon start coming into a trine with Venus. So Moon trine Venus is where emotions are quiet and somber and a little reflective and a little private. We're able to receive more love, more support, more financial security, better relationship kind of harmony and dynamics. So a lot of moon transits that are going to be going on Wednesday. Just know that it's going to be like this for about 24 hours. And I would really be watching Wednesday night and Thursday night what goes on with your dreams. And I'm going to show you why here. So watch how the moon's going to keep moving. It's going to come into the square with Jupiter where things feel very kind of overly stimulated at midday. Simultaneously, it's trine the sun. Then we are going to see later in the day, it will start coming into a trine with Venus in the PM hours. So if you're like, I need to have like a date night this week. I mean, yeah, it's a Wednesday, but whatever. This is great for, you know, dinner and family or movies or kind of setting the vibe, listening to some music, having a couple drinks, feeling inspired, writing, like that transit. Wednesday night's absolutely beautiful, especially as we start to see the trines going on with Venus. So that's going to be pretty much all of Wednesday night. But because Pisces is about what is kind of this like etheric, you know, realm, perhaps maybe Wednesday night, even especially Thursday night, we have a little bit more of like an active dream kind of subconscious thing that's going on. So watch for that. So then we wake up in the morning on the 27th, which is Thursday, and we're going to notice that a little bit of a different mood on Thursday morning. Moon is conjunct Saturn, so we would rather be in bed. We're feeling a little reflective, or we could be feeling a little bit blocked. We could be feeling a little sad because Saturn is going to be hardening and creating some kind of blocks. This is a time to really pay attention to your emotions, because not only is the moon meeting with Saturn saying, where do you need to have better emotional boundaries? Where are you not working through something emotionally? Where is something difficult coming up for you that you need to process? But it's also coming into a trine with Mercury, which is saying, if you feel that way, don't be scared. Let's talk about it. Write it out, talk about it, get it out of your system. And this is going to definitely be a morning where people can be a little moody and they're kind of keeping themselves and they're kind of isolating a little bit. Now, that trine to Mercury is encouraging communication, empathy, you know, being vulnerable, asking people, how do you feel? What do you need? Is there anything I can do to help you? Remember, you know, so much about Pisces is about sacrificing, giving to those who are in need. So it's a good time if you want to help out a family member or a friend or a neighbor, you know, or something like that to do it. It's also a really great time if you have time in the morning before you're going anywhere. Take time to like sit in private, do a little bit of meditation, maybe read a little bit, sit down and really reflect on grounding yourself and your goals for the day, and put up that psychic shield so you don't get slimed, because people are going to be in their feels, man. All right, so this is where things get a little tricky. Midday, we're going to see the moon come in between Saturn and Neptune. All right, so depending on where you are, it's going to technically happen closer to like 10 or 11 Central Time, but this pretty much for the rest of the day, the moon, which is the most emotional, you know, kind of part of a chart, which represents where we're all at emotionally in a collective sense, is going to be in between Saturn, which limits and restricts, and Neptune, which can basically dissolve or make us feel crazy, or we can feel inspired or kind of connected to source. Any astrologer will tell you when the moon goes through Pisces, we see more issues with mental health, more issues with drugs and alcohol. We see more issues with people having fear or paranoia sometimes. There can definitely be a sense of feeling like everything is kind of like melting. Why? Because this is the last sign of the zodiac. Everything kind of gets washed out before it moves into Aries and we start new. So that moon in between Saturn and Neptune does make me feel like for the rest of the day, the only way to really navigate is to say, maybe it's time for me to take a little time to be by myself, or maybe it's time for me to get some extra rest, or maybe it's time for me to just take a break and come back to this. On the other hand, it's a very intuitive transit, because Moon Saturn is saying, pay attention to your emotions. This is important. Why? Jupiter's the dispositor. You're going to learn something. You're going to receive a message or a download, or maybe you have a breakthrough in something you're writing or something you're reading, and it's going to trine Mercury still. So this is a time where you're like, okay, universe, send me a sign. What do I need to know? Send me a message. And it can come to you throughout the day, especially through like vehicles or like through family members or something that you find at home. But it can also come to you in a dream, which is much more likely to actually happen on Thursday evening as we start to see the moon getting close to Neptune. Now, the one other thing that you're going to see here in the evening is that the moon will start coming into a sextile with Uranus. Okay, right here. Which is just basically saying, if we are in the zone, if we're really tapped in and aware of what's kind of going on for us emotionally or subconsciously, or we're taking that time to maybe kind of be in nature or soak in the tub or take a longer shower or whatever, listen to some music, paint, it'll charge us. It'll kind of ground us out a little bit. And a lot of that's going to require you to kind of drown out the noise of what's going on out in the world. So be mindful of that's kind of also hanging out here in the background. Okay, so then this is going to take us to the 28th, which is Friday. And when we wake up on Friday, completely different vibe. I feel like the astro weather this week is like, have you ever like visited a place or lived in a place where you look at the weather and it looks pretty stable, and then like one day it's like raining, and the next day there's like hail, and then 2 days later it's like 80 degrees and there's sunshine. It's like this entire week is giving me emotional whiplash, just with so many pretty dramatic changes that are going on with the moon. I think you guys are going to feel this. It's going to feel like a bit of like a roller coaster emotionally this week. So we wake up on Friday, the moon is in Aries. What does that mean? We are daring, adventurous, active, independent. We're starting new things. We're focusing on forward motion. Where it gets tricky is that what we will experience on Friday is going to be the moon coming into a square with the sun. Okay, so this is going to be the last quarter square since that last new moon that we had in Gemini. So we're actually going to be preparing kind of like next week for the new moon in Cancer. So the moon conjunct the North Node basically means, okay, you know, we have to listen to that daring, impulsive, kind of feisty, do-it-myself attitude. It's great for being like, I'm going to go start this. I'm going to go build this. I'm going to go work on this thing. I'm initiating something. I got to get going. You know, you might feel a little impatient. Obviously, it's playing off of Mars. And what's really beautiful is that Mars and Venus are sextiling each other at this point in the week. So we've got our action, drive, and determination, which is a little slow. It's a little kind of staying in our comfort zone and focusing on something that's going to give us pleasure or security or resources. It's harmonizing with Venus. Like, this is a wonderful time, I think, this week to be doing anything you need to kind of get together at home. You need to plan a get together if you're trying to, you know, stage a house and show it. If you're trying to organize closets, your garage, your kitchen, if you're, you know, maybe installing a deck, anything like that. And I say that because there's so many planets to Saturn early in the week that's saying, okay, let's plan it out. Let's get the structure. And then we get later into the week and then we're like, okay, things are kind of coming together beautifully. And Venus and Mars can kind of harmonize with one another. Keep in mind, the moon is connected to Venus. It's the dispositor. So with Venus and Mars sextiling, it means that Friday you're going to kind of feel like, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to do this project myself. And maybe you didn't think that you could paint a wall, or that, you know, you could install something in your home, or that you could bake a cake, or, you know, create something, and then you did it because you took the initiative. But yeah, that moon coming into the square with the sun, which you're going to see kind of in the later afternoon at a 7, represents, okay, there are some things that I need for emotional security or within my home space or in the Cancer area of your chart. I need this, and I feel like I need to express and talk about how I need more of this. And this is going to prompt you to go, okay, you know what? Nobody's going to help me. I'm going to do it myself, you know, and you just roll up your sleeves and you kind of get it done. Does feel a little bit kind of discombobulated, you know, when the sun and the moon square. Things aren't really resonating because that is ruled by the moon, and the moon is in a Mars sign. So it's basically saying like our actions and our motivation aren't really lining up with our emotions, and there's something that's kind of like conflicting. So it can be a little tricky for making plans and doing things, I would say, on Friday afternoon, but it does ease up a little bit. And then this is now going to take us to, let's see, what else did I get everything here? Sextile. Oh, and one other thing I would say about Friday. Mercury is going to be square Chiron. And things that we're thinking about, reading, hearing, talking about, can inflict some wounds. So be mindful that sticks and stones, right, can hurt your bone. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. At least that's what we tell the kids. Today, words can hurt. It can definitely trigger something in us that reminds us of the past. We can be feeling like people are being more critical of our home, our homeland, our family, our living situation. Mercury is the archetype of aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings. So you might notice that's like, man, what is up with my brother? Or like, why is my mom like on one? Or like, why is it so difficult to, communicate with my extended family? And you're going to see that maybe part of the tension between the sun and the moon is really directly connected, I think, to also the Mercury square Chiron, where you got some individuals that are just like, I just want to go and do something and get something done. And we're being reminded post Capricorn full moon and also stellium in Cancer. Yeah, but is that best for everybody? Does that work for everybody? Does everybody have the same perspective and mentality and kind of beliefs or ability maybe to agree with how we're navigating some of these changes that are going on the home front? Probably not. So watch your words on Friday because they can definitely sting a little bit. And it looks like the moon is going to meet with the North Node, and that's going to happen right in the PM hours. So whenever the moon's meeting with the North or South Node, whenever planets are squaring the nodes, which I don't think I mentioned that, but Venus will be squaring the node midweek as well. Fateful things are kind of happening. So we may feel instinctively like, oh, there's something I got to get done or something I'm doing. Like that feeling may not really hit until late on Friday night. So be mindful of that. All right, so this is going to take us to Saturday, the 29th, and we wake up in the morning and the moon is still in Aries, and it is definitely still very active because it is coming into now a conjunction with Chiron. Now, yesterday it was kind of sextiling Jupiter, so it was amplifying communication and independence. Now I think that we're losing that sextile and the moon's coming into conjunction with Chiron and it's still going to be squaring Mercury. There's some spillover into Saturday when it comes to like hurt words and communication. That's still kind of hanging out. So if we look at when it starts to square, it looks like it's going to be Saturday night. So what does it mean, having this square? Heated, self-focused, conflict with other people over actions or communications, point blank. That's what it means. Now, thankfully, Venus and Mars are sextile. The sextile was kind of brewing on the 28th, but it's going to be exact on the 29th. So it does mean that like we can work together and harmonize. It is possible. But if we are getting impatient and hostile or short-tempered or aggressive, like it's going to be harder. And I think the Aries placements is really kind of saying like, just using our will and just pushing things, pushing ourselves beyond our limits, pushing other people, trying to get them to do something too quickly. And yeah, being aggressive, like that's not going to help anything. Like when you see squares between Aries and Cancer, especially when we have a number of planets transiting through Cancer, people are much more likely to become very emotional, and you can see them kind of burst into tears or kind of get to a breaking point, and like you thought somebody was okay, and then you realize, oh my God, they've been holding this thing in, and then you don't know how to handle it. So very much so, same as Friday, watch what's going on Saturday, because that moon Chiron is going to show where there is emotional wounding. That is coming up, that is getting triggered likely because of all these planets, Mercury, the mind, Venus, which is relationships, the sun shines a light on the past. So the past can kind of come back to haunt us a little bit on Saturday, and it can make us realize that there are some things that we still have not moved through yet. There are some things that run really deep that may be connected to our roots, our lineage, our families, our mothers. Also the challenges maybe of like going through home or family related things, visiting family, reminders of how things used to be in the past, which can kind of get us like triggered and get us kind of, yeah, get us a little in our feels, I think, throughout that transit. Now, in the PM hours is when the moon meets with Chiron, so it's much more likely to be triggered conversations that'll take place on Saturday night. Now, this is also the same day that Saturn is going to turn retrograde, okay? So Saturn will be turning retrograde at 19 degrees of Pisces. You know, like I said, Saturn retrograde also brings up things revolving around, you know, retrograde, the past, but themes revolving around boundaries, responsibility, and structure. It can be areas of life related to dreams, your subconscious. I do think I would really encourage you guys to pay attention, because I think all of the aspects leading up to this paint a picture. Mercury trine Saturn, you know, where do we need to have better communications and also better boundaries, maybe, so we're not repeating past patterns. Then we're seeing Venus coming into a trine with Saturn, where that can actually create more harmonious kind of dynamics in relationships and also with family. So there's something to be said about maybe leaning into this midweek and being like, I know there are certain things I need to do or things that I need to say or ways that I need to kind of strengthen up a little bit. And then Saturn turns retrograde. So then you're going to feel it. I feel like this is a time also to make adjustments that align with your true aspirations and your values, especially because, you know, Mars is also coming into a sextile with Saturn. So we're kind of like looking at, well, what do I value? What do I need? What am I working towards? And like, does this align with my vision? It can be about reflecting on any disillusionment or confusion you may be experiencing and work on finding clarity and purpose. I think that's the one that I resonate with the most. That's like, you know, is this really in this area of my life? Do I really want to do this? Do I really believe in this? Is this really going to provide me with support? Is it going to help me? I'm also feeling like it's a time to really look at, well, where am I being too serious about some things, and like where am I completely lacking discipline in others, especially when it comes to some spiritual practice or when it comes to my work. I think it's a good time to commit to regular meditation and mindfulness, to dive deeper into your beliefs and explore how they can provide a much more solid foundation for your life, right? Now, here's something that I want you guys to know. We've already had one Saturn retrograde, and it wasn't much. It only went within a couple degrees. And now that we're having Saturn retrograde, Saturn will stay fully this time in the sign of Pisces. This is the last retrograde that we are going to have before we have the Saturn in Aries ingress, which will be in 2025. Even then, it's going to go in and out of Pisces. So think of yourself as like right in the middle of this transit right now. So you really have the best odds if you're working with this, you know, appropriately, and you're taking stock and like, okay, how has it worked so far? What needs to change to better navigate next year, in my opinion. One thing to consider is, other than Jupiter's, you know, Jupiter being the dispositor, is the fact that Jupiter will square Saturn in Pisces. And to put it very simply, Saturn wants to limit, it wants us to kind of, you know, really hold on and build a firm foundation and commit to something. It wants structure and discipline and routine. And Jupiter wants to roam. It wants to travel. It wants to learn. It wants to boast about things. It's ridiculously optimistic. It's about expansion and growth and having more. So these two could not be any polar opposite. And we can see this literally through the archetype of Sagittarius and also Capricorn. Traditionally, when we see Jupiter being squared by Saturn, Jupiter is the faster moving planet, it's going to diminish the positivity of Jupiter, okay? That's the way the cookie crumbles. That's what happens. So we will feel that pressure most in August and September, because that will be the first time that we see the square. And we will see it again also in December and January, because we will see a square then as well. So these are the two periods of the year where we're going to be like, wait a second, am I being too optimistic? Am I doing too many things at once? You know, have I really learned something? Is this expanding too quickly? And it is possible that without the commitment and the persistence and the focus in the Pisces area of our life, we can actually see less positive results, less growth. We can see less optimism in the Gemini area of our life. Squares in transit, they force us to deal with an energy outside of ourselves. It forces us to kind of make a change. So it wants us to meet in the middle. So in order to have sustained growth, more resources, more knowledge, more information, more travel, right, Gemini, we need to reflect. We need to ask ourselves, is this working? Is this going to be feasible forever? Does something, need to give, especially both being immutable signs? So Saturn squaring Jupiter in Gemini during this retrograde. There's going to be tension between your desire for growth and expansion and your need for discipline and structure. This can manifest as a challenge to balance your optimism and enthusiasm with realistic, grounded approach to your goals and aspirations. Interesting. That's what Saturn retrograde wants you to do. So I'm almost telling you guys, really do the Saturn retrograde work. So when the square comes, you can go, I understand that there was going to be some speed bumps. I knew there was going to be some delays. I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm staying focused in the Saturn area of my life. So here's the secret sauce, and I'm working on a video to kind of really help you guys kind of work through this and kind of explain it in more depth for all the 12 signs. Do your Saturn. Do your Saturn work, which is why I'm making the retrograde video. If you are focusing on this between now and November, that's how long the retrograde is going to be, and going okay, blinders, this is what I got to do. It's going to not have you feel as pessimistic about the square. It's going to help you navigate the square better because through patience and persistence, Jupiter can actually grow. He just has to get outside of that square, and that's going to be next year. Now, something to think about also is that in 2025, we will see Jupiter go into Cancer. We will see a bit of an extended square between Jupiter and Saturn, actually, because Saturn will go into Aries. It'll square Jupiter. But Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, so it likes being there. It does its best work in that sign. And eventually we will see Jupiter come into a trine with Saturn, which will be back in Pisces. So it actually pays to be consistent, staying on the path with your vision, with what you are believing in, what you're telling yourself, what you're learning, what you're working on. Because if you make those sacrifices in 2024, 2025 is going to likely yield a significant amount of results. And Jupiter in Cancer could be, finally buying homes, moving house, expanding outwardly, emotionally, expanding family, more positive kind of perspective when it comes to your private life. But you got to do the work this year. So just trust me on this. This retrograde is important. Overall, in general, really it's just a time, I think, to take a step back and reflect on your inner world and the structures that you've built thus far in the last year or so. And this really is seen as an opportunity to make adjustments and strengthen your foundation so you can move forward with more clarity and more purpose. Now, the Sabian symbol for this retrograde, so it's 20 degrees of Pisces because we round up, is a table set for an evening meal. I remember talking to you guys about this. Essentially, I think that this symbol represents a completion of a cycle and preparation for a new beginning. Isn't that interesting? That this is the end of a cycle, Pisces, and it's preparing for a new beginning. And that can really show you with the Jupiter square that's okay, this new thing is coming in. It's not ready yet, but it'll be here soon. It suggests that you have reached a point of fulfillment and you're ready to move forward with a sense of optimism and confidence. But what is Gemini? It's talking about it, right? It's talking about it. So I see Saturn in the 12th house as being this thing is brewing. I'm working on this thing, but I'm not talking about it yet. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. And this is what I'm staying focused on, because if I get too boastful, or if I get too, talkative about it, or I'm putting too much pressure on myself, who knows what happens. It may not be ready yet, it may not be the time, but it's coming in the future. This theme is also about indulgence. It's about abundance, the fact that everything the individual needs is readily available and the world about him if you only recognize it. The image of a table set for an evening meal suggests nurturance and caretaking. It also alludes to the fact that Man is free to accept or reject whatever life offers him. However, it's usually the case that an individual will not move to claim anything for his own until he recognizes the value and potential usefulness of a thing of himself. On a practical level, this symbolizes prosperity and gift giving with no strings attached. At its highest, it represents special sensitivity to the needs of others and sincere desire to be of service. Watch for inability to recognize the needs of others or witless optimism and refusal to face reality. The accent is on being provided for. You may discover that things appear today just when you need them. Your greatest advantage lies in anticipating what others will need. Be observant. As you give, so shall you shall receive. Be generous. Guard against taking unfair advantage over others' kindness. Don't forget to say thank you or express appreciation when someone does you a favor and goes out of your way to make your life more comfortable. Something else I was thinking about, and this has just kind of come up for me recently with Jupiter and Gemini, just thinking about it archetypally of like exploration, Jupiter, joy, optimism, humor, learning, and then Gemini's connection to what we read, what we're listening to, our connection with our communities, our neighborhood, our siblings, sometimes even our friends. This is about, I think, really having that mind shift on like talking about what we're trying to create, talking about joy and happiness, and really finding ways where if that's lacking in other areas of our life, Saturn, we are out and looking for it and talking about it and trying to kind of bring that into our inner world. Our relationship with our communities is so important. I think that we may see slowing down of things going on in certain countries, or there can be issues with borders. Certainly Saturn, retrograde will bring that up. You're going to hear a lot about borders. But I think that it's about really saying, okay, well, if stuff's going on out in other countries or even in other states or other places, we don't have to get consumed by that, right? We don't have to get consumed by talking about all of the Debbie Downer, negativity, things that aren't working in the world. If we have this mind shift and we're like keeping our sense of humor, we are going out and talking to people in our community, we are shopping locally, we are joining in courses and classes, things locally, and trying to create harmony and happiness and joy and curiosity, I think, in our inner world, things lighten up, our mind lightens up. So this is going to be a time where I would really encourage you guys prior to getting to the square in August that you're talking more about what you are learning, where you're going, what you're thankful for, telling people jokes, finding ways to connect with people rather than falling into the Saturn kind of retrograde hole that's just like, no, I just want to hide away and kind of leave myself alone. I see this as the first kind of breaking through, especially when it comes to society changing a little bit post-pandemic, and people learning how to kind of connect and communicate and get out there and mix and mingle again, and kind of getting out of like this fear mindset that they've been in with Saturn and Neptune having been in Pisces. 19 degrees is about relationships. So this is the degree in which it will be retrograding through, which means that it's going to be really putting an emphasis on who you're partnering with at work, who your spouse is, who you're dating, your relationship to that particular house, the people that come into your life that help you provide stability and security with that house. It's in the second decan, so the other way of looking at it is that it's going to be about your relationship to people who help you when it comes to kind of building those things. Remember that Saturn limits, restricts, and it's about stability, maturing, and timing. This will be felt the most by my Capricorns, Aquariuses, because you guys are ruled by Saturn, and also Pisces placements. Now, the retrograde will take place basically from the 29th of June until about November the 15th, 2024. It'll be retrograding from 19 degrees all the way to about 12 degrees of Pisces. So this means if you have any personal planets, let's say you have a sun, moon, rising, an angle, maybe you have another planet or a node anywhere between 11 and 20 degrees of Pisces, you are going to be feeling this the most because Saturn will be retrograding, reviewing structure, commitments, goals in regards to that particular planet. So this is where it pays to know your sign and your placements and your houses. Equally, my mutable signs, you guys are going to be feeling this too, especially if you have sun, moon, or rising between this 11 to 20 degrees. So my Saggies, my Virgos, and also my Geminis, you guys are really feeling this square throughout the next couple of months. Now, something else that I was thinking about is just like Jupiter being the dispositor. It's so interesting to see, like, you know, Jupiter's trying to break away from Saturn, but it's still the dispositor. And so that's why I'm a little bit more optimistic about it. I feel like Jupiter's going to keep rocking and rolling forward. We're not going to see a retrograde here for several months still. So when Jupiter is the dispositor of Saturn, it's this very kind of complex interplay of two energies and two themes that are kind of like pulling in different directions in your life. While Jupiter wants growth and optimism, Saturn brings the challenges relating to responsibility and also our emotional lives. So that relationship of Jupiter being the ruler here creates dynamic tension. It can feel expansive and optimistic, but it can also like lighten up the heaviness of Saturn. I think that's the other way of kind of looking at it. I think the other way of looking at it is that, you know, it's possible in practical terms that this may manifest as a growth period in areas relating to communication, learning, and networking, right? Jupiter and Gemini, while simultaneously facing challenges revolving around emotional and spiritual life. It's essential to find a balance between these two energies, using Jupiter's optimism and mindset to navigate Saturn's challenges and resilience and determination. Not to like overly simplify this, but I feel like Jupiter and Gemini is like, what are you reading, right? What books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? What YouTube videos are you watching? What news stations are you watching? What radios do you listen to? At what stations? What books can you go this week and bookmark that gives you words of hope and inspiration? What newspaper clippings can you put by your work desk? What quotes can you put, you know, in on your phone as your lock screen? Words are going to be inspiring throughout this transit. It's going to really help remind you to stay the path and to have focus and to believe in yourself and to not give up. For some of you guys, it quite literally is scripture. I mean, you may not be religious necessarily, but I could definitely see, because of Pisces' connection to organized religion, and Jupiter being about like something that's faith kind of, you know, fueled, that a lot of people are going to be, you know, turning to their faith. Now, for you, it may not necessarily be Christianity or, you know, Judaism or whatever organized religion that some people kind of subscribe to. It could be spiritual, meditations. It could be lectures on spirituality or on Eastern modalities and other kind of Eastern practices. And when we are listening to something and reading something and really taking in the words, that it's really able, it helps us kind of make sense of what's going on in the world. So I encourage you guys this week, find an author, find a book, find a spiritual teacher, find a podcast, something you can listen to or read, and bookmark it. So when you start getting in your head and you're feeling the doubt and you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, I want you to go to that particular bookmark, or I want you to go to that video, or, you know, take a walk and listen to that podcast, something that's gonna kind of boost your perspective a little bit and kind of keep you on the path of optimism as well, okay? And comedy too, Jupiter, comedy, it's comedians, you know, it's like things are really heavy right now, and I feel like we need to be really championing those who are making us laugh and people who are helping us kind of lighten up a little bit. And also we can better kind of talk about or tackle or handle some really heavy discussions and some really sad things, right? Saturn can be about grief, it could be about depression, it could be about loss. And where we can learn how to talk about it in a lighthearted way, so we can kind of liven up the room a little bit and like release some of that pressure and some of that doom and gloom. And so that's the other way of looking at it, is just, yeah, kind of finding things that can kind of make you laugh. Memes, Jupiter and Gemini is very memes. Things that can be like, yeah, it's pretty sad what's happening in this situation, but you can either laugh or cry at it, you know? So anyway, that's my food for thought. Let me take you guys now to Sunday the 30th, which will be the last day. And when we wake up next Sunday, the moon is still in Aries, but it's just ingressing into Taurus. So depending on if you're an early bird or not, That moon is probably going to be in Taurus by the time that you wake up. Nice placement for the moon. It's very comfortable here. It's exalted. It's playing off Venus, and Venus is moving through the sign of Cancer still with the Sun and Mercury. So something to kind of think about is that that moon going into Taurus, it's immediately coming into a square with Pluto. So it can be a little intense with roommates, home, family members. There's a little bit of emotional pressure. Maybe we are kind of feeling like it's Sunday. I've had a lot of socializing this week. I want to, kind of get into my my comfy clothes and just hang out at home and veg out. But Moon square Pluto, we do feel something is pressuring us to kind of change and evolve emotionally in some way. So we kind of feel a little out of sorts in the morning, but that's going to fade pretty quickly. And we'll start seeing also that, as the moon is separating, we also have that Mars, Venus that's still kind of in play. So it's nice that the moon's ruled by Venus and Mars and Venus are in a sextile. This is a very comfort snacks, being at home, relaxing, indulging. Taurus moon can be doing some cooking, doing some gardening, going to the farmer's market. Things like that are really nice with some of these sextiles on Sunday. And in the PM hours, we will also start to see that the moon is coming into a sextile with the sun. So I really love Sunday for a lounging at home, relaxing, indulging type of day. I feel like it's good, especially as we're kind of coming into the end of this kind of lunar phase. We're getting ready to prepare for the Cancer new moon next week. And that sextile is just saying we need to kind of get everything that we need to get for the week. You might have a really decent, haul at the farmer's market and find that you got some really great produce with Mars and the moon in Taurus, or some really beautiful bright flowers, or maybe, you're feeling like you want to spend all day working on a really amazing meal. Great transits for that, because that's really what Taurus and Cancer wants to do when we see these sextiles. The only other aspect that we're going to see is that Mercury in Cancer is going to kind of be, it's kind of happening on Saturday and Sunday, but Mercury's been in a sextile to Uranus. So that also means that the way that we're communicating and expressing our emotions, or the way that we're kind of reorganizing or moving around our home or our private kind of lives, it is having a shift, it's having a shift in us emotionally or physically. I like when Mercury is sextile Uranus in some of these aspects in my chart. I have Uranus in my 4th house and I have Mercury in my 2nd. Moving things around in the house feels better. When you're going through a room and you want to organize the whole room, and you first do the first stage where you purge and you clear everything out, and then you go through and you clean everything, and then you're able to kind of reorganize stuff and then move furniture around. It changes the vibe, right? Uranus is the vibe. So if you're wanting to this weekend also be I'm cleaning out the fridge, I'm reorganizing my closet, I am moving furniture around and kind of zhuzhing the place up a little bit, it may feel very different. Anything in regards to physical shifts within the home and the impact that has on you emotionally. And if you're not down to clean and organize, you don't have to do that. It could be as simple as adding some different colors and some different patterns and different stuff into the space, and the impact that has on you emotionally. Or you're bringing some flowers into the space, right? Taurus, or you're bringing some aromatherapy into the space, and how that's making you feel different. So it's going to be about kind of creating a vibe for most of the day on Sunday. That's it for the week. I do want to talk to you guys about the Saturn retrograde through the 12 rising signs. So let me switch this to a whole sign chart as I give you guys my spiel. Here's the deal. We will see the retrograde begin at 19 degrees and it will retrograde back down to about 12 degrees. I'm going to be doing this via whole sign, okay? So you can listen to your whole sign for your rising sign, sun, or moon. Rising sign is going to tell you which house it's retrograding in. That's what I recommend listening to. You can also listen to your sun or your moon sign. It will also apply to that as well, but I think the ascendant is going to be the most accurate personally. I'm using whole sign, but if you're a Placidus user like me, then you need to look at your chart and go, okay, 19 degrees to about 12 degrees, it may retrograde back into another house. So you might have to listen to more than one sign, okay, so that is possible. And what else? You can listen to your progress chart if you want, but I recommend listening to your ascendant sun and moon sign. And once again, this is going to be impacting my Aquariuses, my Capricorns the most because you guys are Saturn ruled, and my Pisces placements. I'm not forgetting about you mutables. You guys are going to feel this as well. Keep in mind that we want to be really looking at, I'm going to show you where Saturn is retrograding, and I'm going to give you some advice in terms of how this may be playing out and what to kind of think about prior to kind of getting to that square that we're going to see in August, okay? All right. So let's start first with my Aries and Aries risings. What's going on, guys? You're about to see Saturn turn retrograde in your 12th house. So a lot of what I've been talking about applies to you. Saturn turning retrograde in the 12th house is definitely going to be a time where, yeah, you're doing a lot of work when it comes to your subconscious and your spirituality. Saturn retrograde in the 12th can bring a period of introspection and reflection on your subconscious mind, especially spirituality and hidden realms. And you may need to establish more discipline or structured habits when it comes to those areas. Maybe you decide I'm going to go back to meditation classes. I'm going to return back to church. I'm going to get back into yoga. I'm going to, make some changes to my sleep habits or my sleep routine. 12th house. Saturn rules your goals out in the world, your reputation, and also your friendships and your groups and other people. So some of you guys might be saying, well, I am now going to be taking time off of work, or I'm now going back to school, or I am now getting ready to, change professions. That could be happening. Something about your status could be changing here as well. Okay? Good luck, Aries. We've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You guys will be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in Pisces in your natal 11th house. One thing I would say is that Saturn does pretty well in the 11th and the 12th house. Excuse me, the 10th and the 11th house. So having Saturn in your 11th house can be a little bit easier than other placements. It also naturally sextiles your sun, moon, or rising because Pisces and Taurus are earth and water, so they're friendly. But this is about reevaluating things pertaining to your friendships and your social networks. So Saturn retrograde in your 11th house can bring a period of introspection and reflection on your friendships, maybe your social networks, maybe humanitarian causes. You may need to establish more boundaries or structure in these areas. Saturn is directly connected to your career and reputation as well as your faith and your belief system. So I could see this as a time where some of you guys are going, are the people that I spend the most time with really on the same page as where I see myself going? Am I making enough of an effort to get out there and network? Am I seeing my friends enough? Am I feeling like it's difficult to kind of connect with some kind of group in some capacity, right? These are all things that you might be kind of thinking about during this retrograde. Good luck, Taurus. We got Gemini and Gemini rising. You will be experiencing Saturn retrograde in Pisces in your 10th house of career and reputation, responsibility, public image. Obviously, this is very personal for you, Gemini, because obviously you've got a number of transits that are going to be kind of happening in your sign. The sun has been there and it's been kind of duking it out with Saturn and Neptune in recent weeks. We're getting ready to see Mars come into Gemini in a couple weeks as well, and Jupiter and Mars will actually square Saturn, and we'll see that in August. Really, for me, this is a time to really reevaluate what's going on with your career. And I think it's going to prompt you to reevaluate your public image, your reputation, what kind of career you're in, who you're working with, who your bosses are. It may really show you if you need to establish more discipline or structured habits in these areas. Now, Saturn is connected to your 8th house of joint resources, other people's money, karmic entanglements, intimacy, in your 9th house of faith and travel and education. So it is possible that you're reevaluating, do I need to change the direction in where or how I'm working? Is it possible for me to make more money in another area? Do I need to make some changes, maybe perhaps to the way that I look at what I'm doing? And it'll be, like I said, very personal because of some of the squares to Jupiter in your sign. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be what you make of it, right? And I feel like you especially, you're one of those signs that if you're really working hard to stay the path when it comes to making your dream, career or goal a reality,
you're going to really benefit in this next year, especially financially. I think the challenge is that you can kind of get blinded a little bit with, well, like I can do more than one thing and anything's possible. There's also possibly like a lot of new relationship opportunities with Jupiter in your sign that's coming up for you. And you're like, okay, I've got all these people showing up, but like I'm really focused on my career. How do I do both? So stay focused with what's going on with work and really pay attention to what comes up for you intuitively about maybe what you're going to be changing in that department. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys will be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in Pisces in your natal 9th house. And this is happening in a fellow water sign. So if you got any Cancer, like, 20 to about, I would say 11 degrees, you'll be experiencing a trine. So that's supportive for you. But basically Saturn turning retrograde in your 9th house, this is about travel. This is about legal stuff. This is about education. This can be about teachers and mentors, your belief system. And Saturn turning retrograde here is a period of reflecting on these topics. So you're reflecting on, do I return back to school? Do I need a certification? Is there a reviewing of your philosophical, beliefs? Do you slow down when it comes to traveling, right? These kinds of things. I think it's about also like establishing more discipline or structure in these areas. And if you know that you want to, become a published author, then it's like, okay, well then what am I doing to be able to get to that point? If you have been traveling too much, then you might see that it slows down a little bit and you're like, okay, it's time for me to kind of like cool it. If you're wanting to return back to school or reconnect with a counselor or even like a teacher, this is the time where you might do that. Now, Saturn rules your 7th house of relationships, Capricorn. So it can also be your relationship to clients, especially people who might be further away. And it is connected to your 8th house of joint money, resources, and finances. So I could also see this having like a bit of like I've met somebody who lives further away and now I'm reevaluating, can this be a relationship that can grow type of thing? Working with like new coaches, mentors, teachers, or trainers, and like really integrating more of like what they're teaching and seeing like the impact that it has on you personally. Okay? Good luck, my Cancers. I've got Leo and Leo rising. You'll be experiencing Saturn retrograde in Pisces in your natal 8th house. All right, so for you guys, obviously the 8th house is intimacy, it's healing, it's joint resources like taxes, inheritances, karmic entanglement you have with other people, intimacy and connection with partners, and it's also about rebirth. So Saturn retrograde here, I think, is like reevaluating shared resources. Where can I get more resources from other people, more support? Where can I go and try to, rectify an issue with taxes? Or where can I go and, pay something off? That can be coming up here. It can also be about personal transformations. I think this is about really kind of tying in your 6th house lord of health and habits. So it can mean that you're becoming more aware of the impact that overworking has on you, or that stress has on you, or issues with coworkers or your daily routine, the impact it has on you emotionally or energetically. And then Saturn's connection to your 7th house is about relationships in the 8th. So some of you guys may be experiencing like, I have a partner that's not working and there's some financial stress, or I'm waiting to get an inheritance and it's taking time and there's somebody who's kind of working through it before I get that paid off. This can also just be about how you're moving through grief and, changes emotionally when it comes to relationships or your habits. And it can be, I think, a time that can be very eye-opening because you may realize like, wow, like it's time for me to do away with like this habit or this routine because it's actually going to free me of something in the long term, right? Good luck, my Leos. I'll see you next month. All right, we got Virgo and Virgo rising. You'll be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in Pisces in your 7th house, which is your opposite sign. So same thing goes for you as it did Gemini and eventually Sag. If you happen to have any Virgo in your placements of your chart from about 11 degrees to 20 degrees, you'll be experiencing a Saturn opposition, which is relational. So having this Saturn transit in your 7th house is really highlighting relationships and partnerships. And I think it's a period of like introspection and reflection on relationships, partners, clients, business partners, reevaluating something about a marriage partner, or even like a service that you sell or a product that you sell, because this can be your marketplace. But the 7th house is also open enemies, okay? This is like, you know, the people who will stab you in the front, not in the back. And so the 7th house can be a number of things. It could be someone who you're married to. It could be a counselor or a partner of some kind. For more context, I look at the rulerships of Saturn. And so Saturn rules your 5th house of lovers, creativity, children, and self-expression, younger people, and the 6th house, which deals with health, wellness, habits and routine, coworkers as well. So something I would say here is that this can quite literally be you being like, you know, do I feel like I'm enjoying who I'm working with and where I'm working? Do I feel like my partner is not as clear or as committed or as responsible as they could be? Obviously, Saturn in opposition to your Virgo placements is challenging, because you're going to kind of feel like some people kind of keep you at a distance a little bit. And I think this is going to be about establishing more or better boundaries or structure in relationships. You know, Saturn can be, well, are we, you know, talking about, you know, committing more seriously? Is this the person I see myself marrying or partnering with or having a kid with or living with? And serious discussions. And you may feel that relationships slow down a little bit, but that doesn't mean that they're not still going to grow. I want to remind you that, you know, Jupiter, which is going through your 10th house, is putting an emphasis on change of your status in general. And that could be new jobs, that could be new marital status, that could be more recognition for what you're doing. And eventually these two are going to kind of tango a little bit, where it's kind of like, okay, you know, yes, you have to focus on your relationships, your partnerships, or some kind of manager, maybe somebody who's guiding you. It could even be with a therapist to help you be more optimistic and, you know, kind of enthusiastic, or to be more extroverted, you know, and kind of out there. So relationships need to be assessed and determined as to whether or not they're kind of helping you or hindering you with this transit. Good luck. We've got Libra and Libra rising. You'll be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in your natal 6th house, Libra. And so this is the house of work. This is the house of health. This is about your routine, your productivity. It can also be about your office space. It can also be about your pets, okay? So Saturn turning retrograde here is prompting you to reevaluate your work habits, your health routines, and also service to other people. I think it's a time to establish more discipline and structure when it comes to these areas. Now, Saturn traditionally rules your 4th house of home and family, okay? So part of Saturn going retrograde is like, you know, am I making time to make the bed, put clothes away, you know, get things cleaned up? Do I have enough time to take the dog for a walk? You know, am I getting the necessary things done? Can be a little bit more complex if you work from home, having your 4th house ruler in the 6th. This can also be about being of service to your family or your relatives and helping take care of someone. Libra risings, like, you know, you guys having Pisces in the 6th house, you're not here to do a lot of hard manual work. And so part of this can be like really reevaluating and going like, okay, how is my workload making me feel very overly burdened? And how is it, you know, that I can kind of work smarter and have a little bit more structure, so that way I'm paying better attention to my emotions. Saturn's also connected to your 5th house of creativity, self-expression, and playtime. So it can mean that you're learning to kind of differentiate, okay, this is when I work and this is when I'm, you know, going on dates, or when I'm with the kids, or when I have time for my hobbies. And so you can feel like things are kind of blending together almost a little too much with some of these transits, and that you don't feel like you have enough time to get things done, or that you're just like kind of burdened with a lot of work. Obviously that's getting kind of highlighted right now with just a ton of planets going through your 10th house. So just be mindful that whether it's, you know, health habit changes, like not eating things or drinking things, or it can be about working out more consistently or being more active, stay with it. And for a lot of you guys, having a teacher or a mentor or somebody who can kind of help you with this, or how to learn how to have some healthier habits, might make a world of difference. Okay. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You'll be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in your natal 5th house. My Scorpios who are like 11 to 20 degrees placements, you guys will be experiencing Saturn trine. So this is actually supporting you in a lot of ways. So it can be really helpful. And for you guys, having Saturn going retrograde, it's reworking something about your creativity. It's reworking something about romance. It can bring a period of introspection in regards to creative projects, hobbies, or romantic relationships. You may feel like there's something that you're doing that you really love and that you just need more discipline in order to make this project or this hobby become more professional. I say that because Saturn rules your 3rd house. And so this can be something you're writing. This can be websites. This can be something you've been learning or something that you're getting ready to teach or, you know, maybe like write a book or something. And Saturn is also connected to your 4th house of home and family. So it can be about you're kind of feeling like it's difficult to, you know, communicate with some of your relatives. You might feel like it's maybe a little challenging when it comes time to, kind of break away from home and family responsibilities to have more fun time or have more time for a hobby or more time for dating or romance. For those of you guys who have children, you can feel like there's a need to really reevaluate, like, what's my relationship with my kids like? Am I reconnecting with them in some way? Maybe am I reassessing how to better kind of guide them or raise them or teach them? And this can also be a time where, romantic partners from the past can come back with a retrograde in the 5th house. That is possible as well. But I do think that this is more about finding more time to make what seems like a hobby or like a side hustle into something that can be like more so real, and talking about it a lot more and kind of putting it into action. Okay. Good luck. We've got Sagittarius and Sag rising. You guys will be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in Pisces in your 4th house of home and family. Same thing goes for you. You're a mutable sign. So if you have anything about 11 to 20 degrees of Sag, you're under a square. For you, my Sagittarians, you've got Saturn going retrograde in your 4th house, which deals with your home, your physical home, your roots, your past, your family relationships, and your emotional security. So you're kind of reevaluating that area of your life. You may need to establish boundaries and structures within these areas. So you might be reevaluating, who do I let into my home? Where do I live? What kind of a house do I buy? You may be in a situation where you're having to help take in a relative or a family member, or maybe you're more so responsible for them or their housing or living situation. It's also possible that you may be in positions where you're either buying or renovating or fixing a house. And there can be stuff that can come up revolving around water and flooding and water damage and things pertaining to the foundation. So make sure that you're really thoroughly looking at the house and having it inspected and worked on by people who really know what they're doing. Saturn's connected to your 2nd house of money, possessions, and resources, and your 3rd house of communications and siblings and ideas. So I could see with Saturn retrograde, you're like, I've spent enough money on my home. I don't need any more things. This can be about a process of actually downsizing and clearing things out and releasing stuff physically. But it can also be about releasing things emotionally, and anything that has been kind of things that you've been holding on to connected to your home or your family that's been bothering you for some time. It's asking you to really reevaluate and say, like, do you want to keep carrying that with you? Or is it time for you to kind of release that and let it go? Especially if it's been blocking you physically or your self-esteem or even your finances, it can be a time to kind of clean house and finally start to get to where you're kind of feeling a little bit better. Okay? Good luck, Sag. I've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. So obviously the next 3 signs, you guys really want to pay attention because it's going to impact you pretty significantly. We have got, for you, my Capricorn, Saturn is turning retrograde in your natal 3rd house of Pisces. You're ruled by Saturn, so this is quite literally about you going back and doing something or you reworking something. It may feel more prominent for you. This is about you, yourself, your body, and your resources and your values. And so I think this is about, the 3rd house, how you're thinking. communication and learning. So this is probably going to bring a period of introspection and reflection about your communication style, returning to something that you once learned, finishing books you haven't completed, and relationships with siblings and neighbors. So it's likely that you're feeling like you need more structure or more discipline in these areas. You may be reevaluating something about also like your vehicle or your car. So you might be like, okay, do I want to trade my car in? Do I want to sell it? You know, do I want to get a car? You can also be reevaluating moving, because movement can be in this house as well. Also documents. So you can be kind of like, okay, well, you know, I want to move, but, you know, is it a good time to sign this lease? Or I want to move, but do I have the necessary funds to make the move happen? And I would say journaling can be a really great kind of like practice with Saturn retrograde in the third house. And you can be like reviewing things that you've been journaling about, kind of seeing the progress that you're making with some of these topics. Good luck. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You'll be experiencing Saturn retrograde in Pisces in your natal second house. Obviously important for you because you are traditionally ruled by Saturn. So when Saturn retrogrades in a house, you play a much more kind of important role. Saturn retrograde in the second house for you is going to be a period where you're really looking at your finances and you're looking at what you've been spending, your self-worth, your values. And I think this is where you definitely, if you feel like finances have kind of gotten out of hand, you're going to have a little bit more of like a disciplined approach to when it comes to handling spending. This can also be a time where if there has been limitation going on, you know, with resources, you know, it can lighten up. This can also be a time where if you have not had money coming in, the retrograde could unblock something and bring in new resources for you. With Saturn's connection to your second house, to your 12th house, it is about like hidden subconscious fears revolving around money and like whether or not something's going to pan out and if you're going to have enough and if you're going to be secure. I would say that with Saturn in the second house, you're going to make as much money as you think that you're worth. This can also reveal to you and show you where there's been kind of like holes in the bucket where you're like, oh, I had these subscriptions and things I didn't know I had, or I was spending money for this monthly and I wasn't aware of it, or, you know, this is where that money went. So things can be found that can kind of help you when it comes to your resources. Good luck. And we have Pisces and Pisces rising. You guys will be experiencing Saturn turning retrograde in your sign. So happening in the first house is definitely like a complete reevaluation and also introspection and self-reflection, whether that's your goals, your body, your appearance, how you present yourself, your style. It's likely that you're reevaluating something about your identity or your personal goals here as well. Now, Saturn is the connection to your 12th house of the subconscious and the 11th house of goals, networks, and friends. So you may be kind of like oscillating and going back and forth between Saturn, where you feel really strict, and Neptune, where you're kind of like out to lunch. And you have your good days and your not so good days. And I really feel like with Saturn retrograde, you know, with Neptune still direct, you're going to be less hard on yourself and you're going to be like more optimistic and kind of open-minded about what the future holds. Also, your co-ruler Jupiter is in the fourth house, and eventually you will see these guys square. So it's really obvious that like you want to expand or you want to move or you want to change in your inner world. And I think Saturn retrograde is just having you kind of like really ask yourself, what do I need to do to get there? And where do I need to get out of my own way? Where can I be delaying myself or second guessing myself or doubting myself? Or like what hidden things are going on that I don't see that is actually inhibiting me from being able to move forward? And also this is about your goals when it comes to your career, and also like I think really not isolating yourself from friends or society, but knowing when it's time to put yourself first and be like, I have to do me first. And once I kind of get things, you know, on the right track, then I can focus more about kind of integrating in with my friends and stuff, and maybe using more, like being a little bit more cautious before you're just kind of mixing and mingling with certain people. Yeah, Saturn in the first house, you can kind of feel like a lone wolf, sure. But I do think that this is about you prioritizing yourself first. Don't be critical on yourself. Pay attention to your health and healing. This is really important as you're going through a Saturn retrograde in the first house. Pisces rules the feet. So there can be something kind of going on with your feet, or you can have circulation issues with your feet, or you can be having problems with your like toes or your balance or your stance. And the first house is what you do first thing in the morning. So Pisces risings would really benefit from getting up, going swimming, or being in water, or being by water, meditating, having some kind of spiritual practice where you can ground your energy and go, these are my goals for the day. This is what I'm, focusing on. This is what I'm envisioning. This is kind of the standard I'm holding myself to. Okay, now I go about my day. That can be really helpful, and I would encourage you guys to really practice some of that while you're in this particular transit. I hope that's helpful for you guys in navigating the Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and also just the week ahead. I hope Saturn is kind to you guys, and we will see how this goes when we get to next week. But let me know, once again, where is Saturn retrograding in your chart? Were you born with Saturn retrograde? Do you have any advice for any of us in terms of how to navigate that, or anything that you've observed while Saturn has retrograded in the past? I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out throughout this next week. I'll be here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. That way you're up to date when we have new videos coming out. If you guys haven't seen them, we do have our July horoscopes that are out for the month. And we will continue to be having our new and full moon reports as well, so don't miss those. Until next time, I'll see all of you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.